let's see what this high protein brownie does to my blood sugar. So yesterday we tried a conventional brownie and it really didn't have too much of an impact on my blood sugar. It actually stayed quite stable within the same range. And our thoughts around that was, yes, it might have been a little bit too heavy of insulin dose based on how I usually eat, right? I'm usually eating protein along with that, usually eating a much bigger meal, right? With more food as a whole. And so all of that will factor into how an insulin dose works, right? And so I'm actually going to give the same insulin dose for this high protein brownie as I did with more of the conventional style, just because they have basically the same amount of carbs. And we'll see how my blood sugar responds. So this high protein brownie is from a company called Naked. They sent me this brownie mix, which has pretty decent ingredients, has 11 grams of fat, 22 grams of carbs, and 15 grams of protein, which you're not going to see in most brownies, right? And so we'll see not only how, number one, this impacts my blood sugar, but also how I feel afterwards. Because if you remember from that brownie yesterday, I felt lethargic, I felt tired, I felt starving, even more so after I had the brownie than I did before. And it just didn't feel great, despite my blood sugar looking good, right? So let's eat this high protein brownie to see what it does. So we are back 2 hours later after having the Naked high protein brownie. Let's see how it impacted our blood sugar. So we started at 118, remember, and now we're at 120. So pretty much the same, similar to the conventional brownie. Didn't really see a whole lot of rise or spike in blood sugar. And I thought this more high protein brownie might have a tendency to actually drop me low, but it stayed pretty much within the same range. And, that's not a shock to me because the conventional brownie did more or less the same thing. And it was a very similar amount of carbs, right? Now, the difference between these two doesn't necessarily have to do with the numbers, because this is a thing that often isn't brought up when we're talking about balanced blood sugar. It's not just about the number, it's also about how you feel after you have that meal or snack, right? And after the brownie, I remember I was brain fogged. I was tired, I felt like I needed a nap, and I was super hungry. Like immediately after I had that, I was like, I need like a full meal. And I felt like those 2 hours went by so slow because I wanted to see the impact of that brownie on my blood sugar without any interference from other foods, right? And so I waited those 2 hours, but I was starving. I was counting down the minutes until I could have my next meal. And so with that brownie, I was starving, I was lethargic, I was brain fogged, versus this higher protein brownie. I still felt hungry shortly after eating, but I felt more energized. I felt more satiating. It was less of that desperate need to have to eat to satiate myself. And so that's the difference. When you have balanced blood sugar, you feel better. You feel more energized. You feel more mentally clear. You feel more satiated. Versus when you don't quite have that balanced blood sugar, even if the number looks okay, you're just not going to feel great. You're going to feel brain fogged, sluggish, sleepy, really hungry, right? And that's the thing that's not often discussed when we're talking about balanced blood sugar. It's one part numbers, but it's also another part of how do you feel after that meal, which so often gets lost amongst the CGMs and the rises and the falls with your blood sugar, right? You really want both. Now, with Naked's brownie, it's not going to be as moist and as decadent as you might say as like a regular brownie, but the flavor profile is fairly on par. And there are some like dark chocolate chips that they kind of throw into it. That is a nice twist. It's a little bit drier, and I'm wondering if I've added a little bit more water to it, if that might have helped with some of that, because the directions read 6 to 7 ounces of water added to this mix. So who knows if that would have helped. There already is fat added into it in the form of coconut oil, so I thought that might have provided a little bit more moisture. But nonetheless, it was still good flavor, and I felt like the next day it tasted a little bit better. So I think Naked brownies could provide a great alternative to a dessert like brownies, especially for those folks that, don't feel great after eating a brownie. Maybe their blood sugar crashes or spikes up. Maybe they feel really lethargic or really hungry or brain fogged. And if that is you, something like this could be a great alternative because of the amount of protein that it packs in and the stability that can bring to you. And so if you'd like to pick up this mix at a discount, DM me the word brownies and I'll send you a link to grab it.